www.dreamfieldsfoods.com.
Okay.
Okay. And so the
Professional
tab,
right.
and then you go to the left, there's a menu on the left, and there's resources and downloads.
Okay.
And if you scroll down there, you'll find one that says Dreamfields Test Procedure. It's
Gotcha.
down the page a bit. Okay. If you pull that up, it's a PDF, and basically it is a description of the protocol that we use to do the glycemic index testing. And it's fairly detailed. You know, it goes into the fact that we want people to be fasting, the fact that we don't want them to have alcohol or caffeine, we don't want them to do strenuous exercise. You know, there's a number of things that we do to, as I mentioned earlier, control the person's their metabolism, so that the effect that we measure, we hope, is mostly the pasta and not something else that's going on with them. And at the bottom of that page, there's basically a summary, which is, since 2004, we have tested every production batch of Dreamfields. It's part of the release process. So, you know, we run the product, we take samples of the product through the run, we send them to a lab, which is in Gainesville, Florida. They run that test that's explained on that page. And then we calculate the glycemic index, and if the glycemic index is within the range of around 13, 14, somewhere in there, then that calculates to a glycemic load of about 5, and that's where we're at, is we're saying that, you know, we have about 5 grams of digestible carbs, and we'll say that those 5 grams of digestible carbs is the same as a glycemic load.
Mike, I have a question for you regarding the blood sugar, because I know you measured blood sugar, it says here, every 15 minutes for 2 hours. Do you have those hard numbers of what the average spike in the blood sugar was?
Yes, we have 1,200 graphs basically,
right?
You know, which trace out the excursion that goes through. It's 15 minutes for the first hour, and then it's 30 minutes on the second hour, which is standard for that. Okay. Sure. But yeah, we have those.
Where is that? I'm not seeing that.
That is not on the website. That's an internal document for release of manufacturing.
Sure.
Okay. So
well, I think that would help maybe resolve some of this controversy, is if you release that information, because that's what Dr. Gannon and Dr. Nuttall found in their study, and I want to make sure people know what we're talking about who aren't familiar with that study. It was published in Diabetes Care, and it's off my screen now, so hang on a second. Here we go. Diabetes Care in February of 2011, and basically what she did, and I talked to Dr. Gannon just yesterday, she said that they measured, or they had them eat, 5 people eat traditional pasta, and then 5 people eat the Dreamfields pasta. And it was originally done, and this is her words, not mine, on old people.
Yeah, okay.
Their fasting blood glucose started somewhere around 110 to 112, and this study actually was done by the Minneapolis VA Medical Center and the University of Minnesota. And they found that the spikes in the blood sugar were very similar. So then they thought, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's redo it, but do it this time on younger people. And the younger people had an average fasting blood glucose of around 96.
Right.
And they, too, saw a similar spike and then decrease in blood sugar. Now, I got to tell you, I decided to do this same study myself because I was interested. Now, it was funny because I said, well, did you put any sauce on this? Because, I mean, most people eat sauce with pasta. And she said, well, no, we didn't want to skew it with anything else. We wanted to truly measure pasta for pasta. I said, well, so no butter, no nothing? And they said, no, it's salt and pepper. And I was like, that is disgusting. So, but I did it. I had the Dreamfields yesterday morning. And then just this morning, right before our interview, I had, God forbid, I had regular pasta. And I've got it right here in front of me. And did this test. And are you interested in hearing how my results went?
Sure.
Well, basically, I have pretty good blood sugars. Obviously, doing this low-carb thing for several years has helped with that. And I started off with a blood sugar reading yesterday before having Dreamfields of 87. That's fasting overnight. Very good. Then I had 2 ounces of the Dreamfields, which is 1 serving size according to the package. I did have it with the sea salt and pepper, and it tasted just like regular pasta. I did cook it for only 8 minutes because I did not want to overcook it, because that was one thing you mentioned last time. Make sure you don't overcook it or you're going to destroy the matrix, which makes it Dreamfields.
Right.
So, and one thing my wife had a question about for you, and we can maybe ask that in a minute, but it was basically, well, what if people cook it to 10 minutes and then it like keeps cooking for a few more minutes? Won't it break down the matrix? Or I guess you kind of factor that into the 10-minute cooking time. But anyway, my blood sugar started off at 87. Within 30 minutes of eating it, it had jumped to 123. Within 45 minutes, it was 131. At the end of an hour, it had dropped back down to 105. And then it just kind of hovered around the 100 to 110 mark until hour 2.5. Then it dropped to 95. Then my blood sugar decided it wanted to go back up again. And by almost 3 hours, it was back up to 110. It was interesting results. Let's put it that way. For me, because I was not expecting my blood sugar to go up that much with the Dreamfields. Now, the regular pasta didn't do much better. So it started off a fasting blood glucose of 94, and within just 30 minutes, it was up to 123. Within 45 minutes, 134. Within an hour, it was 136. Still within the next hour, it was still around 110. And it finally did come back down to baseline by the end of the 3 hours. But a similar graph. I mean, I was shocked by this, Mike, because I did not expect that to happen. So I guess it's one of those things of people just have to test for themselves and see how it's responding to them. And that's why I think that blood sugar number that you could, maybe share on your website might help people at least say, well, this is how the 1,200 people as an average responded to it. That's the way I should be responding to it. And rather than this glycemic index, which can kind of convolute the issue because people aren't really understanding where you're going there.
Well, I mean, that's a good suggestion. And obviously, we've talked about that internally, particularly since this study has come out,
right.
That putting some of that data up there, one of the thoughts that I have about this is, if you do an average of an average of an average, what happens is you get these curves that look pretty smooth. And as you said, it's not that smooth.
That's right. That's
when you do an individual person, it does move around.
That's right.
And sometimes you'll get a doublet peak. You'll get a spike, and then an hour later you might get another spike. And it's usually an unusual curve. Now, when you average all that stuff together, it sort of gets washed out, and you see this nice, smooth-looking curve, which is not really representative of very much of anybody. But that's the way it is. Which is one of the reasons why, when you do a glycemic index, what you're doing first is you're feeding the person a known carbohydrate. And in our case, we're doing bread. Some labs do glucose. Some do bread.
Right.
Glucose is a little easier to deal with on a worldwide basis because everybody can mix sugar water together and have it be the same. Our feeling has been that a food product should be sort of measured against another food product so that you're metabolizing it similarly. So we use white bread, which is also acceptable. And then, so if we did that for you, okay, we would know how you respond typically to a carbohydrate. And that would give us a curve. And then we could do the same test that you just did. We could do regular pasta and Dreamfields pasta, and then we could compare the area under all of those curves and say, okay, how much is the difference? Now, when we say that there's a 65% lower glycemic index, what we would expect to see is that the area under the Dreamfields curve would be 65% less than the area under the regular pasta curve as compared to the bread standard that's there. Okay, without the bread standard, you're just looking at the two curves, and obviously that's good data. I mean, it's data. The data's there,
right.
And certainly I would have expected and would want the Dreamfields numbers to be consistently lower than the regular pasta numbers, but the numbers are what they are.
Yeah.
And pasta is a low it's a low glycemic product anyway. Good pasta, good quality pasta is a low glycemic. If you look at the charts, you'll see glycemic index for pastas as low as 38, which is what we say the comparison is.
Right.
But you can see it as high as 49 or 50. And it depends upon the quality of the pasta and the cooking process.
And unfortunately, GI really doesn't matter if it's spiking your blood sugar.
That's correct. Right. I agree.
I'm looking at a graph on my friend from Sweden. He's a Swedish physician named Dr. Andreas Einfeldt. He has a website, dietdoctor.com, where he's kind of called you out. He's called your pasta a fraud, that it's not really low carb. He tested it on himself as compared to some other things that would obviously spike insulin, like potatoes and white bread and things like that. And he tested himself with the Dreamfields, and I'm looking at the graph, Mike, and I mean, his went up to astronomical numbers, and it kind of stayed there a while. He did it for 7 hours after eating the Dreamfields, and it's not real positive looking on the Dreamfield side of things.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one also.
Yeah.
We actually have a small test market going on in the UK, which we started years and years ago, because the UK is fairly knowledgeable of glycemic index,
right.
and the distributor that we have there also does some shipping to other countries, Sweden being one of them. And the local shop that sells the product, and Dr. Einfeldt, is that right? How you say that?
That's right.
Yeah. You know, I know he bought some product and he did the test, and then we of course got input back from our UK distributor saying, you know, what you just said, you know, this is going on. So I emailed Dr. Einfeldt also. That was back in August, I think, of last year, and I said, you know, tell me more, you know, about what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, he sent me stuff in Swedish that was converted on Google to US, so I got some of it. Okay,
Right.
I understand kind of what he did. I know that you know, his excursion from a blood glucose point of view was all over the map. It was very high. I believe it was a single meal. I believe some of the other things he was comparing it to were sort of multiple things in the meal.
Right.
Okay.
Meat and veggies was one.
Yeah.
A wrap with potatoes and salmon. 2 slices of bread with lots of butter. By the way, that's in English now. I'll send you the link when we're done, so you can see it in English.
So anyway, you know, I know that he did that study, and you know, I'm not a doctor, but I know if you fast for that long a period of time, there are some other mechanisms in the body that will help you try to control what's going on. So when you go on for several hours and your blood glucose is trying to normalize after something like that, I really don't know exactly what's causing all of that, but I'm having a hard time believing that it's the pasta. But then on the other hand, he also ate a double serving of the pasta.
Yeah, I did notice that, and I was concerned about that as well, which is why when I did my individual N=1 study myself, I wanted to make sure I did 1 serving, because I didn't want a double serving to unnecessarily spike it even more.
Right.
But if it's low-carb pasta, which a lot of people see this product on the shelf and they think, oh, that's good for my low-carb diet, and they think, okay, I can have 2 servings and it's not going to bother me because it's low-carb. Is that a fatal error on people's part?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the way it is in general that portion control, you know, is a very important part of any person's diet. So just because a product is good for you doesn't mean that you should eat 3 times the amount or even twice the amount that you should.